5 things that will make you a better photographer. Coming up. Hi, it's Peter here, and let's get right into the business. One big obstacle when doing street photography is hesitation. And the hesitation comes from the idea that every photograph should be perfect. You will hesitate if you don't think that this photograph is something great. Just fire away and don't think about getting all the best images every time, because that's not going to happen. There's always mistakes and bad photographs when you go out and photograph, and embrace the failure in a positive way. Try to learn from them, and if you hesitate to make the photograph, you will miss the ones that will end up being good. That's for sure. And the reason we hesitate is that we're too afraid of the mistakes. If we are afraid of mistakes, we will make mistakes. The same goes if you follow sports or have done sports. If you're too afraid of making mistakes, you will make those mistakes. And if it's a team sport, your team might lose because of your fear. And if the whole team is in a fear of making mistakes, they will lose. And that's exactly the same thing when you're doing photographs. If you're too afraid of making the mistakes, you won't do anything but the mistakes. I hope you understand what I mean. So do not hesitate. Just press the shutter and see what comes out. Sometimes we just end up with nothing when we go out and photograph. This happens to all of us. So don't worry about, getting bad images. The good ones will follow. That's for sure. So don't hesitate. And then one very obvious thing is that in order to learn, you need to go out and photograph. Of course, you can learn a lot from studying photographs, looking at different types of videos. And speaking of that, Skillshare, the sponsor of this video, is a place where I go for inspiration. And during the times that I'm not photographing, I watch a lot of street photography classes, what they have, because that is the biggest online community of classes for different types of things, where you can improve your professional stuff, or you can improve your hobbies and just take them to the next level. And if you're not into street photography but you love photography, there are lots and lots of different classes for different genres. For example, how to light a portrait, for example. And if you want to learn more about image editing, you can look at these Photoshop classes. Or if you're doing something totally different, like I'm very fond of cooking, for example, and eating healthy food, watching these classes on Skillshare about healthy food is also something that might interest you too, like it interests me. And what I like about Skillshare is that it's not only about looking at the videos. Most of the classes has also assignments to do, and that will make you go out and photograph. If you are looking at, for example, these street photography classes, that there are quite a few of them. And the first 500 to click the link and sign up for Skillshare will get 1 month of free classes in Skillshare. So do it now and start learning. But don't forget, after you watch those videos and classes, go out and photograph. But let's continue with the next one. Let's talk about a few things about the gear. Well, first of all, in street photography, any gear is totally fine. But what I suggest is to use some familiar gear so that you don't have to fiddle around, or you don't have to look for different things in the menu, and set up your camera beforehand so that you can easily use it, because street photography is a lot about reacting to things and not about adjusting the settings in the camera. So get a camera that you are comfortable with, and if you have a new camera, practice and learn the camera before you go out. And I would say that any camera and any lens is good. I prefer small cameras, and I prefer 40mm full frame equivalent field of view. That's something that I like. But if you prefer something wider or something narrower, it's totally fine. Here again, the most important thing is not the sharpness, but the ease of use of the camera. So don't worry too much about the ultra sharpness or anything like that, and pixel peeping and stuff, because street photography is more about feeling than sharpness. It's about quality image rather than image quality. And I think that's something that you really need to think about, because when I, made a video about first impression video, there were a few comments that, a full frame would be better and this and that would be better. Yeah, probably if we talk about image quality, but I'm talking about the quality images, and I prefer a small, compact type camera, because then I can, be faster and it's not intimidating. I can be invisible a lot more when the camera doesn't scream photography. It's just something that you just snap away and that's it. If I had a really huge camera, I would, or I do feel a bit more visible and more intimidated when photographing, and that's also not the viewer, but the subject that I'm photographing. If there is a person in the image and I have a small camera, and it's a lot easier for everybody, and it's nothing wrong with the image quality either, but there are lots and lots of photographs that I would never be able to make with the bigger camera, and that's just a fact. I've done this so long and I know what I'm talking about. But of course, if you feel more comfortable, more professional, more secure with a bigger camera, use that, because as I said earlier, use the camera that you're most familiar with. And the gear that I'm using right now is Fuji XM5, which I bought about a month ago, and if you're interested in hearing what I think about my first impression, you might want to watch that video. I also use Ricoh GR3X for my street photographs, but lately I've been using this Fuji because it's a brand new camera and I want to get familiar with it and learn how it works and everything, because it's always, when you have a new camera, it takes a little while to get used to it, even though this is quite similar, the usability I mean, that I have with my XS20, which I've been using for my professional video work. But let's continue with more topics. By the way, it's freaking cold. I need to put my gloves on because my hands are freezing. Just a minute, maybe, And let's talk a little bit about the camera settings. I'm not going to go to specific settings on this particular camera, but in general, don't worry about stopping down when you're photographing in the streets, because stopping down means that it's easier for you to make the focus. And I tend to stop down to f5.6 to f8 and use auto ISO, and then limit the shutter speeds to 125th of a second, so that's the slowest, so I can freeze the motion. Sometimes I need to use a little bit faster just to freeze the motion. And I was earlier talking about to have a simple camera that you can use, that you really know how to use. And that's a big part of it also with the settings. Try to keep the settings as simple as possible, then just, so that you can just, press the shutter. And sometimes even a pre-focusing with having f8, pre-focus to like 4 meters, you don't have to worry about the focusing at all. Everything will be sharp. And in street photography, I don't think bokeh is the thing that you're looking for. At least I'm not looking for shallow depth of field when I'm photographing in the streets, or because I don't know, it's just something that I like, that everything is sharp. It's also a little bit more challenging because you can't hide things if you have a lot of depth of field, because with shallow depth of field you can hide things. So that's also one style. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but I prefer everything to be sharp. It makes it makes it so much easier to get those shots. So that how would I explain it? Because the background is part of the story. If you just hide it, then it's just a simple image of something. But if you have the depth of field and you see everything, then it's a bigger story, and you show the context, you show the surroundings a lot better, and it tells a lot more. But it's also a little bit harder sometimes because you can't hide with shallow depth of field anything. You probably know what I mean. So don't worry about the settings too much. Just get the story right. And of course, composition is something that you need to get right while photographing. unless you want to crop it later. Sometimes that is something that you need because fast situations you can photograph quickly and you might not have the time to make the perfect composition. But it takes a little practice to photograph really quickly. And after the next tip, there will be an extra tip, like always. And one important thing is to remember to photograph for yourself. Don't go for likes and don't kind of like care what others think about your photography. Go for the ones that you are comfortable with and what you want to photograph. If you start following others or copying others, you won't get any better. And it's so sad that there are so many photographers that think that they should photograph a certain way because everybody else is doing that. I think that's not healthy either if you go for the likes and for what other people think. And this is of course for hobbies, for amateur photographers who do it for them for their own joy and all that. Of course professional photographers need to consider what the client likes, so it's a little bit different thing. But now I'm talking to amateurs that are photographing as a hobby. Don't go for the likes. Of course, if other people like that, it's a bonus. But the biggest thing and the most important thing is that you like your own photographs, and I think rest will follow. If you are consistent with your work and your photographs, others will start to appreciate it, and you don't have to go for the likes. They will follow after you've done what you are most comfortable with. So don't go for the likes, go for the things that you like. And the extra tip is try to be invisible when you're photographing on the streets. It's so much easier to photograph strangers if you're not that visible. And one thing of course was the smaller camera and that. But the tip how to do that is in that video. There are lots and lots of tips about how to be invisible. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.